That's Nat King Cole joining Harry Belafonte in a rendition of Belafonte's song, Shut Up Your Mouth, one of his many hits. As we reported earlier, Belafonte died Tuesday at the age of 96. He was already a music icon when he became recognized for his social impact and his leadership during the civil rights movement. Belafonte took part in marches. He was a dear friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he was considered a voice for the Black community. He was also known for a joyous and energetic spirit throughout his life, as witnessed in this clip from The Colbert Report when he was 84 years old.
Down the way where the nights are gay and the sun shines daily on the mountain top, I took a trip on a sailing ship, and when I reached Jamaica, I made a stop.
Judith E. Smith joins us now. She's a professor emerita of American Studies at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She's also the author of Becoming Belafonte, Black Artist, Public Radical. Thank you so much for joining us. It was lovely to hear that rendition. Let's linger for just a moment on Belafonte's talent, which was considered monumental. Explain his biggest artistic accomplishments.
Belafonte figured out a way to sing folk music as a music of working people around the world. He made folk music speak for Black people, white people, working class people. He infused folk music with his inimitable, rich performance style. You could call Belafonte a performance artist. He used all of his body. He performed with a guitarist, so he didn't have to play the guitar. He used all of himself to convey the spirit of the music, both in the rich traditions that he was speaking to from the islands, but also from around the world. So I think he made music a means of speaking to labor, to speaking to racial equality, to speaking to internationalism, to celebrating Black people around the world and Black culture around the world, and to making it accessible to audiences who felt really embraced by his performance style.
And he worked with Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy Jr. He helped organize the March on Washington. What was his understanding of the obligations of a performer to do more than just perform, but to also speak about justice?
Well, I think one way to understand that is that Belafonte came of political age in the late 40s, at a time that there was a broad cultural movement to think about what democracy should look like and to challenge racial exclusion and the color line. So Belafonte was already concerned about racial justice and social justice issues before he met Martin Luther King. He met King in 1956 when King came to raise money in New York to support the Montgomery bus boycott. And Belafonte describes himself as not that enthusiastic about Black ministers, but he was very moved when he met King. He was moved by his humility. He was blown away by the power of working class people refusing to ride the buses and keeping that bus boycott going. And King asked him for help. And Belafonte, really from that moment on, dedicated himself to being of help to King's movement, to the civil rights movement King represented, but also to the radical students who did sit-ins. I mean, he really had a broad view of the civil rights movement and made himself very indispensable for many, many people who were active.
This is a slightly unfair question because you know his work and life so deeply, but because you do, is there anything about his life that would surprise people as a last question?
Well, I mean, one thing I think people often think that Belafonte is from Jamaica, but he actually was born in Harlem, and he was part of the Harlem Black and West Indian community. He did spend some periods of time in Jamaica, but he really is New York born and bred. And I think that's one piece of who he was and how he stood. Let's see what else I can say that would be surprising. I mean, his range is sort of extraordinary, I feel. The range of people he was involved with and the range of activities he was involved with.
We're gonna have to leave it there. That is fantastic. Thank you for bringing his life alive for us, Judith Smith. Thank you.